Number 10. Diamond engagement rings. Imagine a young man on his knees in a crowded restaurant. He is sweating. His heart is pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. In his shaking hand, he holds a tiny velvet box containing a compressed rock. He isn't just asking for a partner, he is offering a financial sacrifice. The silence in the room is heavy. Everyone is watching, waiting to see if the size of the rock matches the size of his love. If the stone is too small, the audience will judge him. He is performing a ritual, but he has no idea who wrote the script. We treat the diamond engagement ring like it is a tradition as old as marriage itself, something ancient and sacred passed down from our ancestors. That is a corporate fiction. Before the 1930s, engagement rings varied wildly: opals, sapphires, or just plain metal bands. Diamonds were actually falling out of fashion. They were seen as common and uninspiring. Enter De Beers. They were sitting on a massive surplus of diamonds and needed a way to control the supply and artificially spike the demand. They didn't just market a product, they engineered a psychological necessity. They launched one of the most effective propaganda campaigns in history with the slogan, "A diamond is forever." They successfully linked a rock with zero intrinsic value to the concept of eternal fidelity. They bribed Hollywood to include scenes of diamond proposals in movies. They instructed fashion designers to talk about the trend on radio shows. They essentially bullied an entire generation of men into believing that if they didn't spend a fortune on this specific carbon arrangement, they didn't actually love their future wives. The tradition isn't romance. It is a masterclass in market manipulation designed to offload excess inventory on anxious young men. You aren't buying a symbol of eternity. You are paying a tax on your own insecurity. So, they successfully monetized your romantic anxiety. That's impressive. But once advertisers realized they could rewrite your love life, they decided to move on to your biological needs. They didn't just tell you who to marry. At number 9, they told you what to eat, and they used your doctor to do it. Number 9, the bacon and eggs breakfast. Picture a Sunday morning. The sun is streaming through the window. You hear the sizzle of grease in a cast iron skillet. The smell of bacon and eggs fills the house. It feels wholesome. It feels like the definition of home. You sit down to a plate of cured pork and chicken eggs, convinced that this is the fuel your body needs to start the day. You aren't just eating breakfast, you are participating in a cultural memory. But that memory is false. You are actually eating a press release. Before the 1920s, the typical American breakfast was very light, usually coffee, a roll, or some fruit. It was quick and efficient. The heavy, greasy American breakfast did not exist. This shift wasn't driven by nutritional science. It was driven by the Beechnut Packing Company, which was struggling to sell bacon. They hired Edward Bernays, a man known today as the father of public relations, but who should really be known as the father of professional manipulation. Bernays was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and he knew how to hack the human brain. He didn't run ads saying, "Bacon is yummy." That's amateur hour. Instead, he pulled a psychological coup. He sent a letter to 5,000 doctors asking a loaded question. Is a hearty breakfast better than a light breakfast to replace energy lost during the night? The doctors, thinking in terms of calories, said yes. Bernays then took that medical consensus and splashed headlines across every major newspaper. 4,500 physicians urge heavy breakfast to improve health. He paired the headline with images of bacon and eggs. He didn't sell the product, he sold the authority. He manipulated the medical establishment to turn a surplus meat product into a pillar of American culture. You aren't eating bacon because you crave it. You're eating it because a PR guy tricked your great-grandfather's doctor. Bernays proved that if you wrap a lie in enough authority, people will swallow it whole. But while Bernays manipulated adults with health, the corporation at number 8 decided to go after a softer target. They hijacked the most magical figure in a child's imagination and turned him into a billboard for sugar water.
Number 8. The modern image of Santa Claus. Close your eyes and picture Santa Claus. You see a chubby, cheerful man with a white beard, rosy cheeks, and a bright red suit with white fur trim. He is holding a bottle of soda. He looks timeless, like he stepped out of a European folktale from the 16th century. You trust him. He is the spirit of giving. You assume this is how he has always looked. But if you went back in time 100 years, you wouldn't recognize him. You are hallucinating a corporate mascot and calling it a saint. The Santa Claus of history, St. Nicholas, was a skinny, somber bishop in robes that were often depicted as tan, green, or blue. Even in early American folklore, Santa was a shapeshifter. Sometimes he was an elf, sometimes he was scary, and he certainly didn't have a standardized uniform. That changed in 1931 when Coca-Cola realized that people stopped buying soda in the winter because it was a summer drink. They needed a way to push sugar water during the cold months. They hired an illustrator named Haddon Sundblom with a specific directive: create a wholesome, grandfatherly figure who embodies the spirit of Coca-Cola. Sunblum painted the fat, jolly red and white Santa we know today. Why red and white? Because those are the brand colors of the Coca-Cola logo. They didn't just run an ad campaign. They colonized the collective imagination of the entire planet. Every mall Santa, every Christmas card, and every movie depiction is essentially unpaid advertising for a soft drink company. They took a mythological figure meant to represent generosity and reformatted him to represent consumption. We didn't just commercialize Christmas. We let a beverage company redesign the main character. So they own your holidays, but at least you own your movement, right? You can walk where you want, when you want. Well, actually, you can't. The crime at number 7 was invented to kick you off the pavement so the machine could move faster. Number 7, jaywalking. Imagine you are trying to cross a quiet street. There are no cars coming. You step off the curb. Suddenly, a police siren chirps. You freeze. An officer writes you a ticket for jaywalking. You feel ashamed. You feel like you broke the social contract. You endangered yourself. You are a bad citizen. But stand there for a second and look at the asphalt. Why does the car own that space? Why are you, the human being, the intruder in your own city? This is one of the greatest victim-blaming campaigns in human history. In the early 1920s, the streets belonged to pedestrians. Cars were the intruders. If a car hit a person, the public viewed it as the driver's fault, and mobs would often drag the driver out of the vehicle. The auto industry was terrified. They knew that if cars were seen as death machines, cities would ban them or severely restrict their speed. They had to shift the moral blame from the driver to the walker. They launched a brutal PR campaign to ridicule pedestrians. They weaponized the word jay. In the 1920s, a jay was slang for a hillbilly or a country bumpkin, an idiot who didn't know how to behave in the city. They paid newspapers to run stories mocking jaywalkers. They lobbied governments to criminalize the act of walking in the street. They invented the crime of jaywalking to legally steal the public space from the public. They didn't make the streets safer. They made the streets exclusive territory for their product. By criminalizing walking, they prioritized the flow of traffic over the flow of humanity. So here is the question. Is jaywalking a necessary law for public safety, or is it just corporate theft of public land? Tell me if you're a jay or a driver in the comments. The auto industry shamed you into buying a car, but shame is a versatile tool. The industry at number 6 realized that shame could also be used to force you to buy gifts for the one person in your life who probably didn't want them in the first place.
Number 6, Father's Day. It's mid-June. You are standing in a department store staring at a wall of ugly neckties and world's best dad mugs. You feel a low-level panic. You don't know what to buy, but you know you must buy something. If you don't, you are a bad child. You are ungrateful. So you buy a set of grilling tools he will never use. You hand over your credit card convinced you are honoring your father. You aren't. You are just bailing out the retail industry during their slow season. Mother's Day caught on quickly because it had a sentimental, emotional core. Father's Day, however, was a total flop for decades. Men in the early 20th century hated it. They saw it for exactly what it was, a commercial cash grab. They laughed at it. One historian noted that men scoffed at the holiday's sentimental attempts to domesticate manliness. It was effectively dead in the water. But the retailers wouldn't let it die. In the 1930s, struggling during the Great Depression, the Associated Menswear retailers formed a literal committee to force the holiday into existence. They coordinated with tobacco companies and tie manufacturers to relentlessly promote the date. They didn't appeal to love, they appealed to guilt and commercial obligation. They eventually bullied President Nixon into making it a permanent national holiday in 1972. It wasn't a grassroots movement of children wanting to honor their dads. It was a desperate lobby of tie makers needing a second Christmas in June. Every time you buy that generic gift, you are surrendering to a trade group that viewed your father as a target demographic, not a human being. They engineered a holiday to sell ties. That's annoying, but it's cheap. The scam at number 5, however, is designed to extract a specific percentage of your yearly income, and they used a mathematical formula to make sure you couldn't argue with it. Number 5, the 3-month salary rule. You are back in the jewelry store, but this time you are holding a calculator. You are looking at your bank account. You have heard the rule since you were a teenager. You should spend 3 months' salary on the ring. You do the math. It hurts. It's a down payment on a house. It's a new car. But you tell yourself, this is the rule. This is what respectable people do. You sign the check. You think you are following etiquette. You are actually following an ad copy from the 1980s. The 3-month salary rule is the most brilliant piece of price anchoring in history. It is completely arbitrary. It didn't come from tradition, religion, or economics. It came from the De Beers marketing department. But here's the smoking gun. The rule changed depending on where they were running the ad. In the United States, their initial campaign was 2 months' salary. They figured that was the maximum Americans would tolerate. But when they expanded to Japan in the 1970s, they realized the culture was different and they could push harder. So the ads there explicitly stated 3 months' salary. They adjusted the ancient tradition based on exchange rates and local GDP. Later, they quietly bumped the US rule up to 3 months as well. It's a sliding scale of greed. By giving you a specific formula, they bypassed your logical brain. Instead of asking, how much is this rock worth, you asked, how much do I earn? They framed the purchase as a reflection of your status, not the product's value. You aren't being generous, you are being audited by a billboard. They dictate how you spend your money, but the next industry dictated how you start your day. They convinced you that your body would shut down without their product, creating a nutritional myth that is literally feeding the obesity epidemic.
Number 4. Breakfast is the most important meal. You wake up groggy. You aren't hungry. Your stomach is settled. But a voice in your head says, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. You feel guilty skipping it. You force down a bowl of sugary flakes or a bagel. You think you are jump-starting your metabolism. You think you are being healthy. In reality, you are just spiking your insulin because a cereal box told you to. For most of human history, people ate when they were hungry. Sometimes that was morning, sometimes noon. The rigid dogma that breakfast is the most important meal was not a medical discovery. It was a marketing slogan coined in a 1944 advertising campaign for General Foods, the makers of grape nuts. They wanted to sell more cereal. The phrase was designed to sound authoritative, like a commandment from a health god. Kellogg's and other cereal giants poured millions into lobbying, funding dubious studies, and putting cartoons on boxes to indoctrinate children into the cult of the morning sugar crash. They created a moral panic around skipping breakfast, linking it to poor grades and low energy, despite modern intermittent fasting studies suggesting that skipping breakfast can actually have health benefits for many adults. They took a neutral biological function, eating, and turned it into a moral obligation to ensure their quarterly earnings remained high. You aren't fueling your body, you are fueling their supply chain. So you eat when they tell you to eat. But surely you drink water because you're thirsty, right? Wrong. The rule at number 3 has you drowning yourself in plastic bottles for absolutely no scientific reason. Number 3, the 8 glasses of water a day rule. You see them everywhere. People carrying massive neon-colored water bottles like security blankets. They sip constantly. They panic if they leave the house without one. They count their glasses. I need my 8 glasses today, they mutter, running to the bathroom every 20 minutes. They believe they are flushing out toxins. They believe they are achieving peak hydration. They are actually just overworking their kidneys because of a typo. The 8 glasses a day rule is a zombie myth. It refuses to die despite having zero scientific basis. It likely stems from a 1945 recommendation by the Food and Nutrition Board, which stated people need about 2.5 liters of water a day. However, the very next sentence, which everyone ignored, said, most of this quantity is contained in prepared foods. You get water from apples, steak, bread, and coffee. You don't need to chug raw water on top of that. But the bottled water industry found this myth to be a goldmine. Brands like Evian and Dasani have spent decades pushing the narrative that you are chronically dehydrated. They pathologized the sensation of thirst. They told you that by the time you feel thirsty, it's too late, which is biologically insane. Thirst is the mechanism that tells you to drink. It's not a failure signal. They convinced you to buy a free resource in a plastic bottle by making you afraid of your own body's signals. You aren't hydrating, you're just expensive plumbing. They color code your hydration levels. But that's nothing compared to how they color code your children. The system at number 2 separates humanity into 2 camps before they can even speak, just to double the sales receipts. Number 2, pink for girls, blue for boys. Walk down the toy aisle of a big box store. It is a visual apartheid. On the left, an explosion of aggressive neon pinks, glitters, and dolls. On the right, dark blues, grays, trucks, and guns. You are shopping for a baby shower. You panic. Is it a boy or a girl? You need to know. You can't buy the pink blanket for a boy. The social police will arrest you. You assume this color coding is biological, innate, and ancient. It is actually younger than your grandmother. For centuries, all babies wore white dresses. It was practical. You could bleach the diapers. When colors were introduced, the rules were actually the opposite of what they are today. A 1918 Trade magazine article explicitly stated, the generally accepted rule is pink for the boys and blue for the girls. Pink was seen as a stronger, fiercer color, derived from red, suitable for men. Blue was dainty and soft, suitable for women. This flip didn't happen until the 1940s and 50s, largely driven by manufacturers. Why? Planned obsolescence for clothes.
If you dress all babies in white or neutral colors, parents can reuse the same clothes for all their children, regardless of gender. That is bad for business. By rigidly gender-coding every sock, pacifier, and stroller, retailers ensured that if a family had a boy and then a girl, they had to buy an entirely new set of gear. They manufactured a gender divide not to uphold social values, but to prevent the efficiency of hand-me-downs. They monetized your child's identity before they were even born. They control your ring, your breakfast, your holidays, and your gender expression. But those are just details. The ultimate manipulation is number one. This isn't just a product, it is the cage you live in. It is the artificial rhythm that governs your entire existence. Number one, the 9-to-5 workday. Imagine a herd of animals. A loud bell rings. They all wake up at the exact same time. They eat quickly. They travel in metal boxes to a large concrete enclosure. They sit in rows under fluorescent lights for 8 hours. Another bell rings. They go home. They are too tired to create, so they consume. They watch screens that tell them to buy things to feel better. Then they sleep. Repeat until death. This isn't a dystopian novel. This is Tuesday. You call it a career. History calls it a factory compliance protocol. The 9-to-5 workday feels like a law of physics. We assume it is the natural way human beings are meant to operate. It is not. For most of human history, labor was task-based, not time-based. You worked until the harvest was done, then you rested. The 8-hour structure was engineered during the Industrial Revolution, most notably championed by Henry Ford in the early 20th century. But Ford didn't give us the 5-day, 40-hour workweek out of the goodness of his heart. He did it for two calculated reasons. First, efficiency. He found that running factory lines 24/7 in 3 8-hour shifts maximized machine output. Second, and more cynically, consumption. Henry Ford realized that if workers worked 12 or 14 hours a day, which was common, they had no time to spend the money they earned. They needed leisure time, not to rest, but to shop. He needed to create a class of people who were tired enough to be obedient, but free enough to be consumers. The modern workday is an arbitrary construct designed to synchronize humans with machines. It ignores our circadian rhythms, our energy peaks, and our mental health. It treats you like a component on an assembly line, even if your assembly line is a spreadsheet. You aren't working 9 to 5 because it's productive. You're doing it because a car manufacturer in 1926 needed you to buy more stuff. So look at your life. The ring on your finger, the food on your plate, the hours on your clock. How much of it is you? And how much of it is just a marketing campaign that you mistook for reality? The system isn't broken, my friend. It's working exactly as it was designed. The question is, are you going to keep reading the script, or are you going to start writing your own? Thanks for watching. If you want to see how the education system was designed to make you a better factory worker, click here. I'll see you there.